We may, in these swamps, see everywhere the marks of former cultivation in old embankments covered with large trees, and the enclosed lands which were once clothed with golden rice now support dense forest of cypress, tupelo, and gum. And the once deep and broad canals, which were used by the ancients to drain these swamps, are now covered with trees and choked up with trunks and limbs of dead trees and accumulated sediment. Hi, my name's Andrew Aga. I'm an archaeologist that's worked in the low countries of South Carolina and Georgia for the last 23 years. And one of my passions and major research focuses on rice agriculture and the archaeology of past rice fields. Coldbrook Plantation was founded by the Ulmer family in the late 18th century. So after the Ulmer family immigrated to America and Georgia from Germany, they acquired plantations here near Savannah. Besides their productive and profitable tidal rice plantations closer to the coast, they got Coldbrook Plantation, an inland setting that they could escape the malarial rice settings of the heavy river systems. They decided to engineer the swamp that we're standing in today into an inland swamp rice field, complete with a system of embankments that prevented the water from getting inside the field, embankments that also helped keep water inside the field during flooding that was required to support rice crops. And then there was a system of canals and ditches in the interior that facilitated the movement of water quickly to get water on and off as needed. The archaeology at Coldbrook in this inland rice field setting may be the best opportunity that we have to understand the science and technology of rice and how it was used to engineer this swamp. What I'm standing in here is our archaeological excavation to study the ditch, to see how deep it was, how wide, and what the sediments inside were. And, the archaeological study clearly shows that this ditch was pretty serious and would have definitely been able to transport lots and lots of water, maybe on a daily basis, as the planters and the enslaved worked to keep the rice crop safe and secure from outside intrusive waters. This ditch would have supported all of the water that flowed around the field, or gates could have been opened up to let this water into the field as needed. It's about 1.5 feet below surface today, which means this ditch probably saw a whole lot of water course through here as they attempted to dam up Black Creek and divert the water around both the north and south sides of the field. The black soil may represent a burning event, or when they logged and cleared this swamp in order to embank it and ditch it to get it prepped for rice, they likely burned all of the debris, burned the floor. The cinders would have helped provide nutrients for the future rice crops. What's exciting is that this embankment is so intact that we not only get this original ground surface, but we have the chance to test the soils for the exact kinds of plants that used to grow here. We collected pollen samples from this contact point so that we can see what the environment was before rice was actually being engineered into this swamp. We also collected phytolith samples and carbonized plant macroremain samples for possible, for evidence of the kinds of plants that grew on top of the embankment. Maybe sweetgrass was grown on top of the embankment in order to help keep the soil strong, and also the sweetgrass would have provided material to create containers that would have been needed, especially fanner baskets for winnowing rice. Running parallel with the embankments that flank the field system here are a series of canals that are 100 feet apart. Normally you would think canal or ditch would be open, it'd be an open feature, you can see it, there may be even water still in it today or flowing through it today. However, here, most likely due to erosion and the abandonment of these fields towards the end of the 19th century, when there's no one here to continually dig the sediment out and clean the dead trees out and limbs and such that fall into these canals, they fill in quite rapidly. What we're standing in right now is one of those ditches or canals that transported water both in and out of this rice field. And you still can see parallel rows of trees that used to line the canal. On the other side of the Savannah River in South Carolina, rice planters had already mastered settings such as these in the interior swamps outside of tidal-influenced rivers. By the 1780s, Carolina planters were already moving their rice plantations to the coast and along rivers in order to take advantage of the tides to facilitate a much more profitable industry. So it's interesting that Coldbrook Plantation was established at the late 18th century and attempted to grow inland rice, just as the trend in the low countries of South Carolina and Georgia were moving away from these interior settings. The archaeology at Coldbrook in this inland rice field setting may be the best opportunity that we have to understand the science and technology of rice and how it was used to engineer this swamp in possibly new and experimental ways, different from the ways Carolina planters were already growing rice in these settings for almost 100 years at this point. And they may have also adopted technology and other knowledge that they gained from the tidal rice settings and tried to apply some of that here. The excavation that I'm standing in here helped us understand how the southern embankment to this field system was constructed, and we also had the chance to learn how erosion has played a part in the demise of this rice field. One of the hallmark differences of this embankment as opposed to the one to the north is that erosion has seriously affected this part of the rice field and the archaeology site. The soils are very dark, and even though they're difficult to read, we were still able to interpret that about this much of the embankment is all that's left here. Sometimes the features are so eroded that one of the only ways we get a chance to see them is if certain plants are growing on them. And so here you can see grass and small trees and large trees lining the embankment and showing you very clearly where it is, with the ditch or canal to one side. What we're in here is possibly the earliest inland rice field associated with Coldbrook Plantation. It took advantage of the most natural setting that rice would have been adapted to most easily with less modification and engineering of the landscape. Through here is the original ditch or canal that both brought water in and drained water out of this small field, and the grass is growing on high ground to both sides. That we can hypothesize would be where the rice was actually growing, and then to each side the ground sort of slopes up naturally to create sort of a natural embanked area without the need to build embankment. We dug an excavation trench here to capture the shape of the ditch below ground so we can study its shape, its depth, and how it filled in through the years. And then we also made cuts on both sides to investigate the high ground to the sides of the ditch. And from the high ground, we took a couple phytolith samples in a column in order to see, first of all, did rice grow in this small little field area? If it did, what kinds of rice? Were they red rice from West Africa or white rice from Asia that was marketable? We also collected the cores to study the differences between rice and how it was grown through time. The archaeology at Coldbrook in this inland rice field setting may be the best example, may be the best opportunity that we have to understand the science and technology of rice and how it was used to engineer this swamp in possibly new and experimental ways, different from the ways Carolina planters were already growing rice in these settings for almost 100 years at this point. And they may have also adopted technology and other knowledge that they gained from the tidal rice settings and tried to apply some of that here.